All right, catch, clean, cook, wild salmon edition. I'm back from our charter and I've got a whole salmon here. As you saw at the marina, the head is off, the guts are out. I've scaled it. This is a little scaling tool. All you do there is kind of rub it back and forth. The scales will go flying, so you want to do this outside or in a deep sink. But that's how you scale it. You can also use the back of your knife. It's just not quite as safe as using a blunt object. Couple knives you can use. This is a fillet knife. Obviously you can use that. A lot of guys that are processing lots of fish at the fish shacks, you will see are using serrated knives. Great tool. I prefer a slicer just because you can keep sharpening them. After you dull the serrated knife, you have to get a new one. But I opt for the slicer, and all I do is I go in from the belly. You can see where the spine is and the line at the back. You just want to cut right above the spine and work your knife. You can hear all the little rib bones. Work your knife down towards the tail. You can go fast, you can go slow. And that is a perfect fillet. I like to just go right underneath the spine. From here, you can take a spoon and scrape this off. I'll snap the spine into a couple sections. I'll actually boil this. You can do salmon stock, salmon bisque, do a chowder, give it to your dog, but you don't need to throw that out. From here, you can see some cartilage and bone. We want to trim that off. Just long, sweeping strokes. Again, this can go into your salmon stock. Can't throw it out if you like. And here's the belly. So for this, I'm gonna flip it over towards me, and you just want to get just underneath these rib bones. Now from here, we're gonna pin bone the fillet. So you kind of see one sticking out there. If you run your finger, you can hear that, you can actually feel all the pin bones. I'm actually just helping them kind of expose them here. I've got some fancy fish tongs, fish pliers. You can actually just use little needle nose pliers if you don't have fish pliers, and a little cup of water. This helps them come off easier. Now, when they're really fresh, the bones will be a little bit harder to remove. That's just the name of the game. The ones at the head I find are a bit harder to remove. If you get going down the fillet, you kind of get into a bit of a rhythm if you're lucky. That's it. The bones kind of only go about halfway down. And from here, you can go on to portioning. Trying to get a little bit more meat, you cut the head off on a bit of an angle. So you can either square this up and save it as a trim, or kind of cut it on a bit of an angle. I like around 6 to 7 ounce fillets. And I like to leave the skin on, get it nice and crispy. But that's how I clean a salmon. All right, so whether you're catching your own fish or just buying fish, you don't want to waste anything. So I mentioned earlier, you can make a bisque, and there's still quite a bit of meat left on the spine and in the tail. You just scrape it off with a spoon, and then if you actually spoon this into a boiling hot soup, it'll cook it because they're such small pieces, and you'll end up with nice little fish chunks for your salmon chowder or bisque. If you're working with wild fish, I'd recommend freezing it, but you could eat this as a tartare or put it on some sushi rice for a nice snack. But just because these fish are prone to parasites, all sushi grade kind of wild salmon should be frozen. And if you're gonna freeze it, I'd recommend freezing it whole prior to doing this. But look at that, that's about 4 or 5 ounces of fish that you just scraped off bones that usually would go in the garbage. So nice little hack to extend your harvest. All right, now I'm going to show you my favorite way to cook a piece of salmon. We're going to pan fry it with the skin side first, make it real nice and crispy with a classic beurre blanc. All right, my favorite sauce with most fish is a beurre blanc, and that just means white butter. In English, you can call it butter sauce. Doesn't really matter, but it's a classical French sauce, and it starts with a reduction of white wine. Got a couple ounces. We're just making a small one, so a couple ounces. And I'm going to reduce that to concentrate the flavors and boil off the alcohol, concentrate that the acidity. I've got a couple sprigs of thyme and some shallot. And the shallot's just going to add some sweetness and a bit of depth. And bring that to a simmer, let it reduce a little bit. And then the trick is to slowly whisk in butter. And we'll turn down the heat. Right now it's on high, but we'll turn down the heat to low. And the idea with the butter is you add it in stages because you want to maintain a consistent temperature while the butter melts. If the sauce gets too cold, it'll split. If it gets too hot, it'll also split. Kind of like a hollandaise almost, but it's all about technique. Again, the ingredients really simple. I'm gonna put a little tiny bit of chili flake for a little depth of flavor. Squeeze a lemon, and then we'll finish it with more lemon as well. While our sauce is reducing, let's start our salmon. So high heat, preheat your pan. A lot of times if fish sticks is because the pan isn't hot enough and there's not enough oil when you first start. Generously season the skin with, got kosher salt. Kosher salt isn't as salty as like iodized table salt. So you can kind of, looks like a lot, but it's really not as salty. Another good one is sea salt for fish. All right, so the liquid has been reduced by at least half. I'm gonna turn the heat to low. And I'm just gonna start off with 1 nub of butter. And I'm whisking this until it's about halfway melted. So about halfway melted, and add another nub of butter. So and this is what's called making an emulsion. We're emulsifying the butter into this reduced white wine. So again, once this second nub of butter is almost halfway, add another one. And what this is doing is it's maintaining an even, consistent temperature. Once you've started building your sauce, you can add a little bit more. You can also do this with an immersion blender if you don't want to use a whisk, but this is such a small amount, it's pretty easy to do with a whisk. So this recipe is 2 ounces of white wine to a 1/4 pound of butter, and this would be enough for about 4, maybe 5 portions. But this sauce should really be used sort of the same day. You kind of really need to keep it warm to hold the consistency. If it gets too cold and you try and reheat it, it will split. So you want to keep this kind of warm off to the warm side of your stove while you're, like I'm cooking the salmon. It's going to be near that burner and keep warm. Otherwise, once it's cold, you can't reheat it. You can see it's a nice kind of white yellow color. And when you stop stirring, it's solid, it's not split. So you want to whisk it until that last bit of butter has been melted and emulsified into the sauce. And then I'll remove the thyme before we serve it and add the chives. Okay, so once the butter has been melted, I have a uniform consistent sauce. I'm going to turn off the heat and I'm going to squeeze in half a small lemon. Some flavor. I'll remove the thyme and I'm going to add my chives. Got a real beautiful, nice chive butter sauce. Okay, so my pan is hot. I can feel it just even by the handle. I can sort of see it smoking a bit. Add some olive oil. And I'm going to put the skin side down. Now I'm going to season the flesh side and let that get crispy. So there's not a lot of oil in this pan. I'm going to add some butter, but I don't want it to burn. So I'm going to wait till the salmon is about halfway before I start adding butter. And then the big trick here is not to touch it or flip it for a couple minutes. You want the skin to get crispy first, otherwise it's going to stick. Pro tip, get yourself one of these metal, really thin fish flippers. It makes such a huge difference. Flipping fish in the pan, it just really, because it's so fine, it's almost sharp, it really gets under the skin and allows it to lift off without sticking. Kind of a little test at it, just kind of give it a tug. It's still sticking. Skin's not quite crispy yet. Now we can add our butter. Basting it with the brown butter. Called it beautiful, crispy. So at this point you can add lemon. I just avoid putting it on the skin. So if you squeeze the lemon when the flesh side is down, it actually caramelizes some of that lemon juice flavor into the fish. All right, so once the top and the bottom are crispy, you kind of feel it'll be a lot firmer once it's fully cooked. You can put a temperature probe in there if you wanted and make sure it's about 130. I like to just rest it on a piece of paper towel. I'm gonna cook some veg and serve it with the sauce. Okay, our salmon is done. I've cooked some greens, I've got some rice. I'm gonna show you how I like to plate, being a restaurant chef and all. Got our nice, beautiful, creamy Chive Beurre Blanc. And just spoon it around the fish. We've got a beautiful wild Pacific salmon with chive butter sauce. Thanks for watching the Wild Salmon Catch, Clean, Cook. Hope you enjoyed this video, and better yet, hope you enjoy the recipe.